the Tudor court, where ambition went to die. Fortunes rose and fell like Henry's waistband, and sycophancy wasn't just encouraged, it was a bloody art form. But let's set the scene. Imagine a place where every day was a festival of ego, gossip, and the odd beheading. With the whiff of roast meat and political treachery wafting through the halls, welcome to the magnificent, excellent and triumphant court of Henry VIII, or as I like to call it, the original reality show, but with more syphilis. Now you might think the court was just a swanky palace, but no. Think of it as a travelling circus of power, privilege and people desperately pretending they like each other. Picture the world's deadliest office party, except you might genuinely lose your head if you mess up the coffee order. Back in the days of Henry VI, court life was about as glamorous as a damp sock. Nobody wanted to be there, but along comes Edward IV, who visits the court of Burgundy and says, "I'll have what he's having." Suddenly, England's court is all banquets, tournaments, and more chivalry than a comic con full of larpers. The Order of the Garter is revived because, let's face it, nothing says power like strapping fancy ribbons to your leg. Chivalry is in, and the king becomes the nation's premier influencer. Fashion, art, etiquette, and a healthy dollop of showing off. Henry VII, though famed for clutching his purse strings tighter than a medieval chastity belt, still knew how to throw a party. He'd build palaces and stage dazzling events, because why just rule when you can flex? But then comes Henry VIII, and if you thought things couldn't get more extravagant, you've clearly never seen a man try to impress Europe by bankrupting himself with feasts, masks and a jousting habit that'd make a Formula One driver wince. Henry's court was less household and more the centre of the universe. Government HQ, cultural hotspot, martial boot camp, and the nation's poshest dating app all rolled into one. It was where nobles, new money, and anyone with the right bribe could mingle, plot, or ideally get rich. Of course, for every nobleman there were a dozen hangers-on. Relatives, servants, freeloaders, and an army of rascal boys who hung about hoping for tips, snacks, or a free ride. You know, like interns, but with more pickpocketing. Security? Oh, they had it covered. 5 yeomen, 2 grooms, and the collective vigilance of a damp lettuce. It's a miracle the palace wasn't nicked brick by brick. The real drama was all about proximity to the king. The closer you were to Henry, the more power and perks you enjoyed. That meant everyone was trying to get just one seat closer, patronage, bribes, and enough bootlicking to polish the throne to a mirror shine. Of course, the king was a generous sort sometimes. If you caught him on a good day, say on his way to hunt or fresh from beheading a traitor, he might grant you lands, titles, or the medieval equivalent of an Amazon gift card. But don't get comfortable. Henry's affections shifted faster than his waistband after Christmas. The court was a seething hive of factions, backstabbers, and good lordship for sale. If you didn't keep up, you were out. And out meant not just social ruin, but if you were unlucky, a sudden interest in basket weaving, from inside the basket. And if you think being a courtier was all glamour, think again. It was as much boredom as it was backstabbing. Endless waiting, hanging around, inventing ever more creative ways to be seen. The ultimate reality of court? Most people just wanted a decent meal and not to end up as the main course. Women at court? There were precious few. Mostly wives and daughters of nobles, plus the Queen's own entourage. Catherine of Aragon's household looked like a roll call of Downton Abbey's aristocratic cousins with extra Spanish flair. Her closest ally? Maria de Salinas, the original ride-or-die friend who'd stuck with Catherine through thick, thin and Tudor melodrama. Catherine ran her household with high standards, kindness and a strict no-fun policy. The only drama was courtesy of her confessor, Fray Diego, an insufferably proud friar with a scandalous reputation who, according to gossip, was probably the only man in England not actually sleeping with anyone at court. Now, all these people needed somewhere to live and food to eat. Lodgings were a status symbol. Being kicked out meant disgrace. Being allowed to stay meant you were in, unless you had to sleep above the kitchens, in which case, hope you liked roast beef. All day, every day. As for pets, the Tudors were animal lovers. Dogs with velvet collars, singing birds, monkeys and the occasional marmoset. Henry's dogs were better dressed than most modern influencers, and he spent more on lost dog rewards than most people earned in a year. Try explaining that to the taxman. Of course, sexual morality was, shall we say, flexible. Men did as they pleased. Women were expected to be above reproach, and anyone caught was more likely to be shamed for bad fashion than bad behaviour. The king, at least, was discreet, unlike the French court, which made Love Island look like a church picnic. Courtly love was all the rage, knights pining after ladies, secret ciphers in letters, jewellery full of meaning. Every Valentine's Day was basically Secret Santa, but with more poetry and a whiff of desperation. But for all the poetry and games, everyone knew the score. Patronage, power, and a bit of passionate intrigue if you were lucky. Catherine tried her best to keep things virtuous, but the court was a hotbed of ambition, envy, and the occasional spectacular fall from grace. So, viewer, what did we learn today? That the Tudor court was less Downton Abbey and more Game of Thrones, only with worse hygiene, a higher chance of syphilis, and everyone desperate for a slice of the pie, until someone else poisoned it. Follow for more history drenched in sarcasm and dread.